I can usually solve the cube in under 6 seconds.
I first started cubing like 2 years ago on Christmas Day, and my first solve was a couple hours later. Once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down.
We always had a Rubik's Cube lying somewhere around the house, so at one point I was like, well, it would be cool to solve one. So I looked up how to do it on the internet, and when I did, I also came across competitions. And basically ever since then, I've just been cubing like all day, every day. You can choose how competitive you are about it. I mean, for me, it's all competitive.
That's a couple of cubers being interviewed by the BBC at the 3-day World Championship Cubing competition in Glasgow. And it demonstrates just how compulsive the Rubik's Cube can be for some. There are speed tests for standard cubes, mini cubes, pyramids, dodecahedrons, that's the 12-sided beast. And then there are the one-handed races, and I kid you not, blindfold competitions. The cube is an example of the daunting complexity of mathematics. There are 43 quintillion possible positions in a cube. That's 43 millions, and only one solved position. Producer Kaley and director Mark are so committed to the Undeceptions project that they decided to learn the Rubik's Cube just for this episode. Kaley can now solve it in under 4 minutes, and Mark has said he'll get back to me. Me? Well, I gave up cubing the first day I tried it. For me, cubing and mathematics have always belonged together. I was, of course, forced to do mathematics through to the end of high school, but I gave it up the day I walked out of Mossman High, and I can still almost feel the relief. I had a brief return to my mathematics career when my first son, Josh, was learning it at school, but I gave it up when he surpassed me in about year 7. Well, one of my guests today says that almost everyone can remember the exact moment they gave up on mathematics, but he insists that the very subject so many of us abandoned isn't just useful, it's beautiful. Obviously, mathematics is practical. The modern technological world is built on it. But my guest insists that it has a beauty way beyond practical application. The mathematician's circle, for example, is perfect. Every point lies exactly the same distance from the center. That's the definition of a circle. You can describe it perfectly, but you can never actually draw it. You and I are stuck in 3 dimensions, but the mathematician can think and play in a limitless number of dimensions. Mathematics is a language. Some even call it the language of God. But first, a little trigger warning for my American friends. From this point on in the episode, I'll be shortening the word mathematics to maths. I love almost everything about the United States, but saying math is just wrong, and I can prove it. The word isn't mathematic, which would shorten to math. It's mathematics, so it must be maths. Take the related discipline of statistics. No one, not even an American, calls it stat. They call it stats. So mathematics must be maths. QED. Here I stand. I can do no other. I'm John Dickson, and this is Undeceptions. Each episode of Undeceptions, we explore some aspect of life, faith, history, science, culture, ethics, or mathematics that's either much misunderstood or mostly forgotten. And with the help of people who know what they're talking about, we're trying to undeceive ourselves and let the truth out. feel like standing in this space.
Yeah, it's designed. In fact, these things are. I learned this from Stanford's design school that you make the chairs high because then you could it's easy to get up. And whereas if you keep it lower, the inertia is too hard, right? So it's designed. There's a little pneumatic pump on the right side if you want to go higher or lower, whatever. I love it.
I've travelled across the US to California to meet this guy, Dr. Satyan Devados, the Fletcher Jones Professor of Applied Mathematics and Professor of Computer Science at the University of San Diego, which is a lovely historic campus. He's a fellow of the American Mathematical Society and the recipient of 2 teaching awards from the Mathematical Association of America. He writes technical pieces, of course, but his popular writing has appeared in the Washington Post, the London Times, the Chicago Tribune, and plenty of other places. He's also written several mathematical textbooks, a mythical storybook aimed at introducing kids to unsolved maths problems, and he's been involved in numerous mathematical collaborations with artists, one producing a 2-ton metal, wood and acrylic sculpture for Burning Man. That's the annual desert festival about the arts in the Nevada desert. He's cool and he's clever, and he's dedicated himself to making maths accessible for learners from all backgrounds. I could tell that from the moment I entered his mathematical playroom.
Tell me about this room.
Yeah, the room we're in.
Because it looks like I've gone into a preschool.
Yes, sir.
And there's lots of things I could play with.
That's right. So on one side is a glass wall, and on the other side a wall-to-wall chalkboard. We could talk a lot more about why chalk is one of the greatest gifts God's given us, and the demonic work of the whiteboard. That's a separate conversation if you want to. And behind me is basically a little spot for some books, like a little library, but it's a wall-to-wall craft store. Yeah. Popsicle sticks, toothpicks, origami paper, yarn, scissors, cutting, like all
the elastic bands,
bands, paper clips, like anything. Basically, you could fill and resupply this entire place for about $100, right? Because you could just run out of glue and get some more glue, and the idea is simple, which is I usually do things when I get upset, right? Like when I feel like there's a sense of injustice, and so it felt like almost every discipline had laboratories, had places of creation. So if you think about a historian, well, they might actually need to go to Edinburgh to look at the original documents and be there. You could imagine photographers, and you could imagine like literary scholars or working in manuscripts, archaeologists certainly, but even if you think of the sciences, they have labs. Going back to the math and the sciences being put together again, like the biologists have a lab, the chemists have a lab, physicists deal with physical things, and they have labs. And of course, within those areas, you could be in the theoretical end, you could be thinking talking about theoretical ideas behind chemistry, or you could actually be on the laboratory side of it. It doesn't matter, but still there's this playfulness. And in math, I've never heard of a mathematical laboratory, a studio. And so the idea when I came here to San Diego about a decade ago was, what happens if we had one? So in my contract were 3 things: a salary, a chalkboard guaranteed to be in my office, and a space to build a math laboratory. So I struggled with the name because it's truly not a laboratory, because it hasn't been around for generations to know what we're doing. As a biology or a chemist lab, the reason we have a laboratory in college, much less in high school, is that biology has advanced so much that we can now be able to communicate and share how biologists create and push the boundary of biology, that we could bring that down to a college level, much less a high school level. Here's some Bunsen burners, here's some test tubes for chemistry and all these things. And so I didn't want to call this a laboratory because in math, nobody's had one. So we don't know what to do with our hands and our bodies yet. And the question that this place, which is now called a playroom, just a chance to play, is simply asking is, if math has advanced so much with our mind alone, how much more can it advance if our body's also involved? That's it. And the reason you had alluded to it, John, about it kind of being like a playroom, or just, like you just want to get up and touch things, is simply because I am a big believer in the fact that we are embodied. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, things we see with our eyes, things we hear with our ears, right? Things we can touch, impact and make knowledge acquisition and creation better. I mean, this is nothing new, right? It's been done everywhere. There's been an incredible amount of data all over the place. Even Stanford, maybe about a couple of decades ago, came up with something called the D School, the design school, which is this notion of rapid prototyping. If you bring big companies like 3M or Apple or Microsoft and they want to redesign a cell phone, you don't start by looking at the computer and drawing sketches on this. You actually start in 3D. They said, the best way to do it is get some blocks of paper, crumple it up, put some duct tape around it, and give it to somebody and go, does this feel like a phone? Oh no, I want it to be skinnier. Okay, let's squish it, Let's just squish it around, make it skinnier. And so once you have this kind of rapid prototyping, everybody can play. And you can give that idea that I'm thinking in my head to you because it is not in my head. I could physically give it to you. And you could add an antenna, delete an antenna, make the screen bigger. This is what I mean. And once that rapid prototyping is done and you could play with it a little bit more, then you could make it a little bit more rigorous. Then you could get to 3D printing if you have some more of the dimensions. And then you can get into processing later on. So I just wanted everybody to come and play with mathematics.
Sure, let's play. But what exactly are we playing with? What is mathematics? It seems like a simple enough question to answer. It's about numbers, right? But what is the study of mathematics really aiming at?
Have you got a definition of mathematics? I mean, you quickly took it out of the realm of science for me before I opened my mouth. So what is the definition of mathematics?
I think it is, that's a great question. There are those who study the history and philosophy of mathematics itself in the larger realm. I'm a fool, right? I just know a little bit about the world of shapes, about geometry and topology. But I'd say mathematics is really interested in capturing and studying structure and patterns. That's what we really want. And we don't care if the structure and patterns are on a zebra or in our minds, right? How do you do that thing? And one of the simplest ways to find structure and patterns is just counting. Right, 1 chair, 2 chair, 3 chair. That's one of the fundamental things. Oh, I have 2 parents and I have 3 siblings. This as a child, you're building some structure and pattern. Some are tall and some are short. And to me, I actually like the word discrimination or discriminate because what mathematics is trying to do is to say what is the same and what is different. And I'm not putting weight and a value system to it. I would just say, oh, there are 8 chairs here. And the rest of the things here are not chairs. So I am discriminating by saying what are not chairs and what are chairs. And so I would say, oh, this is a prime number. 5 is a prime number, but 4 is not a prime number. And for us to add moral value to it, well, won't 4 feel sad that it's not prime? I mean, shouldn't we all be primes? Well, that's silliness, right? Because the goal is to discriminate and be clean. Now, in the world today, you could turn up the heat and put value system and say, oh, I'm discriminating between men and women and saying, oh, men are thus worth more. Well, then you have problems, right? But in mathematics, we don't deal with values at all, right? We're just dealing with the simple notion of measurement. How would you say what is equal? Are 2 triangles equal if one is a little bit bigger than the other one? What if I scaled one into the other one? Would they be equal? So all this notion of equality, discrimination, measurement, comparison, this is what mathematics is trying to do.
So what is a mathematician doing? I mean, I understand at a university, a mathematician is teaching other students to do maths.
Yes.
And obviously kids do mathematics here so they can be engineers and chemists and all the other things. Yeah. But once you pass all the levels of using maths, what does a mathematician do?
That's a great question. To me, the most poisonous word in the sentence you had just mentioned is use.
Of course. I knew you were going to say that, but...
To me, I mean, it's if I think of my marriage or think of my children, think of my friendships and say, oh, our relationship is great because I can use you to do something. It's like you've just deprived the joy out of that thing, right? So I think the fact that math is actually useful is quite stunning to me. Because I am not interested in the world. I'm just playing in my own mind, right? And so all of a sudden, an engineer's like, oh, I like what you're playing with. Can I take some of those tools and bring it to engineering or bring it to the real world? Oh, you mean people actually care about this in science? It's amazing. And so there have been papers written about the fact that mathematicians take an idea and do whatever they want with it, generalize it, and ask ridiculously unrelated, unuseful questions to the world, but incredibly beautiful questions to a mathematician. And it turns out that that kind of question asking is kind of parallel. This is stunning to how the world is working. And so the fact is, as you keep going more and more in abstraction, you still find connections. So let me give you a simple example. You could take the Rubik's Cube, or just a simple cube.
Which you have over there.
Yeah, and then you could look at symmetries of the cube. For example, if I rotate it a little bit, it kind of looks the same. If I color the cube in different ways, like a Rubik's Cube would. If I rotate a cube 4 times, it comes back to the way it was before, right? And if I rotate it maybe in a different axis 4 times, it comes back. So you could rotate in different combinations and see what it's doing. And you can keep track of how the colors change as you rotate in the X, Y, and Z axes in different ways. And you can keep track of a multiplication table of all the ways colors change. Great, mathematicians were kind of interested in this. And then they said, you know what, why are we talking about a cube? This multiplication table of weirdness is actually what the structure's about. What if we come up with rules for multiplication tables of just random symbols? Like A times B times C equals B times C times D squared. Just some abstract with some rules, right? Just what if we come up with, there's some rules for the cube, what if we do this generally? And we came up with something called group theory, like abstract algebraic systems. And the physicists first said, well, we like the whole thing about the cube thing because it's really important to us. And chemists were saying, well, the structures of these other shapes are good for proteins and these structures we're building. But these abstract rules of silliness, you're just coming up with the studying of the rules, not the studying of the object. It feels useless. And it turns out about 150 years later, this became the foundation of quantum mechanics. When Einstein was keeping track of particles and how they interact, it turned out that group theory was the way it interacted. So this thing that you would think you're just doing incredibly silly things to, it comes back down again.
And yet that isn't the justification of the doing.
Exactly. That's the utility is not what drives us, right?
Yeah.
Now it might be nice to say if I'm trying to get a grant from the government or something, right? Yeah. Just to say, hey, this impact we're going to make is something bigger. But most of the things we do is for the sake of ourselves. So what does a mathematician do? So in my classroom, my job is one of 2 things. One is to cover the topic at hand. So if it is about group theory, to tell the students about how to build their own groups and how to play with this and a little bit of history. And if it's about calculus or all these things, that's one. But the second thing is to give them instill in them how a mathematician thinks. So if the goal is to teach them how to do something, it turns out YouTube videos or computers, all these things, books are written exactly for this thing. But this installation of the sharing of joy through an embodied experience. Like you are in watching me perform. I'm giving you worksheets designed to curate. The questions you have, I'm trying to answer because I'm not trying to just tell you how something is working. I'm trying to tell you why we thought of it this way in the first place. And that comes because we as humans are curious. So you can ask me what are you curious about in math? I'd be happy to tell you all those kind of things. But in general, we're just curious about things. And you could talk about curious about chapstick. Oh my gosh, my chapstick keeps cracking. I wonder if there's a way that could last. If I forget about my chapstick in my backpack for 5 weeks, if I come back, maybe it'll still be fresh to use. So you can be curious about those questions. I am absolutely curious about shapes. I love pictures and I love to draw. So all of my mathematics is asking me about questions about shapes and finding truth statements there.
The more I sat and talked with Satyan, the less I felt triggered by a subject I hated at school. I wish I'd had him as a teacher. But it turns out there's more philosophy in maths than we usually recognize.
So let me give you a rough idea of how I think mathematics works. Most people think mathematics is related to the sciences. You have a department or a division, mathematics and the sciences, right? You have humanities and the arts, and to me, they don't belong to each other at all. To me, science is deeply connected to nature, and you're asking questions about the natural world, physics, about physical things, about chemical things, biological things, and wonderful. Math is simply caring about truth. That's it. So it has actually, the things we study in math are not real. Like if somebody says, let's consider a triangle. Triangles don't exist in the world. It's not infinitely thin. You have nothing called perfect sides and perfect lines and perfect angles. It's completely a make-believe. So math actually comes from the world of philosophy. Philosophers were interested in truth and logic, right? You're making these amazing arguments, Socrates, go back to India and China, the deep thoughts, and then instead of dealing with issues of death and friendship and love and mercy and incredibly hard questions, you ask things about numbers and primes and triangles. You ask much simpler, sillier questions. And because you're asking simpler questions, you could make a lot more progress in it. So now instead of talking about whether euthanasia is good or if it's healthy or like these deeper philosophical questions one way or the other, you could actually prove that the sum of the angles of a triangle is 180 or like these handful of things like this. So mathematics is in the line of philosophy, and neither one in some sense is directly interested in nature. Of course, nature's there and you can get motivated by it. So to me, what mathematicians do, we're just truth seekers. That's all we want.
Satyan is motivated by the beauty of mathematics, and he's not the first, of course. More than 2,000 years ago, Indian scholars studying poetry noticed a remarkable numerical pattern when analysing rhythms of long and short syllables. Over the centuries, other mathematicians refined it into the famous sequence where each number is the sum of the previous two. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on. Most of us know it as the Fibonacci sequence, but that's a little unfair because it was described in India centuries before the 13th century Italian mathematician Leonardo of Pisa, who made it famous in Europe, of course. Ever since, mathematicians have found this elegant sequence turning up in all sorts of unexpected places, from pure mathematics to patterns in the natural world, like sunflower seed spirals and pine cones. There's the point. Mathematics isn't just about solving practical problems. Sometimes it's about discovering beauty and reality, and sometimes beautiful realities. One of those beautiful realities was noticed by the great German astronomer and mathematician Johannes Kepler. He realised that if you divide one Fibonacci number by the previous one, 13 by 8, 21 by 13, 34 by 21, and so on, you keep approaching the same remarkable number, 1.618033, etc. Mathematicians call this phi, or the golden ratio. It's one of those strange discoveries that feels more like uncovering something than inventing it. Artists, architects, and designers have been fascinated by phi for centuries. It's even been suggested that the Mona Lisa was composed around the golden ratio, though we've got no way to verify that. Ditto claims about the architecture of famous buildings like the Parthenon or the Taj Mahal in India. Whatever the case, mathematicians keep revealing elegant patterns that no one expected to find, which brings us back to Satyan. For him, mathematics isn't just a tool for building bridges or writing computer code. It's a way of glimpsing the deep order of reality.
You have written, the full splendour of mathematics is so glorious, so majestic, that we are all children when it comes to exploring it. Yeah, that almost sounds religious.
It is. It is the foundation of so many machines that both move the economy and give our life some form of semblance of happiness for a little bit, right? The newest iPhone is based on foundationally mathematics, which influences engineering, which influences, right? And eventually we have this like technological wonder in our hands. And so we love mathematicians because they feed our addiction to these toys we have. So having said that in one piece, that's one thing, but the second piece is that there's this notion that you must be good in math today in order to be employed. So there is incredible pressure from families, from parents, and from kids on themselves to be good at math, and it always cracks. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The second thing that happens when people meet me, other than telling me that I'm smart, is telling where they failed. It truly feels like I am a priest and I'm listening to confession, right? Oh my gosh, you're a mathematician, you must be smart. Let me tell you, I was good in algebra, but I stopped at geometry. I mean, everybody can know the day their life in mathematics ended. This is not true for English, for literature. This is not true for, what is the last history class you took? Oh, I don't know, Cold War, or was it the Civil War? Like, what was it, European? I don't remember, but like, what was the last math class? Oh, I remember May 17th. I turned in that final exam, and I will never, and so there's there's this painful thing. So I always think of this as math and trauma. And the way you deal with this trauma is to realize that you failed at climbing this mountain, right? Like, oh, the mathematicians are able to do it, but I'm not able to climb. I'll tell you exactly where up on the mountain I was able to climb to. I got to calculus and I stopped. I got to differential equations and I stopped. Even those who got doctorates. I got a PhD, but I didn't become a professor. But I didn't publish that many papers. And there's always this notion of failure. And there's two ways of handling this from a teacher perspective, right? Which is, one, encourage them and say, no, you're great. But I don't believe in this because my way of encouraging it is to say, I agree with you, you have failed in math. But I want to then encourage by saying, but so have I. Because it's almost as if somebody can say to Mount Everest, I fully get this mountain now. That's ridiculous. At the end of the day, you might be at base camp and I may be 4 feet above you. But compared to the beauty and the wonder and the splendor of what math is, we are nothing. So it's almost like somebody saying, I finally get God. Then you just know either their God is nothing, it's a foolish God, or they're foolish, like something's up. And I know, having looked at math enough, it is incredible. It's beyond us. And anything you solve, if you think about this in your own life, John, any problem that you're able to understand, go, oh my gosh, if I used this tool for it, I'm able to get it. The moment you're able to solve something, it allows you to ask 10 new questions you've never asked before. Solutions don't close the problem up, they open it to more problems. So most of the ideas in math people think are, it's this finite kind of a field, and at the end of the day you're going to figure it out, but it's just the opposite. It's vast and infinite, we're just scratching the surface.
So, primary school beginner or PhD brainiacs, we are all tiny sailors on the giant sea of numbers. And it's a very ancient story. Stay with us. This episode of Undeceptions is brought to you by some new sponsors, Tyndale House, and its wonderful Life Application Study Bible. Whether you're a doubter or a believer, the Life Application Study Bible is designed for real life. It's got over 10,000 notes to help you understand the scriptures and apply them to your world. This is a Bible that'll help you go deeper. Compiled by scholars and using the New Living Translation, which is great. It's natural, it's accessible, it's accurate. The Life Application Study Bible helps you place what you're reading within the broader biblical narrative, and it encourages you to compare your understanding with its original readers. And it guides you to wisely think through how to apply it all to your life. The Bible itself claims that the Word of God is living and active. Why not put that to the test and see if it speaks to you right now? The Life Application Study Bible will help you understand the Bible for today. To find out more or just to get a copy, go to undeceptions.com/Tyndale Life. That's undeceptions.com/Tyndale Life. The Democratic Republic of Congo is currently in the midst of an escalating Ebola outbreak. With a death rate between 30 and 50%, it's a dangerous moment for a population already suffering from ongoing civil war. Anglican Aid is on the ground near the epicenter of the outbreak, working with churches and a network of health clinics to prevent the spread of this disease. They need your help to continue, so please consider donating to its emergency relief fund. Head to anglicanaid.org.au/undeceptions. That's anglicanaid.org.au/undeceptions. Every donation makes a difference.
I cannot do my work effectively if I do not have all of the data and all of the information as soon as it's available. I need to be in that room hearing what you hear.
Pentagon briefings are not for civilians. It requires the highest clearance.
I feel like I'm the best person to present my calculations.
You're not gonna let this go, are you?
No, I am not.
And she is a woman. There is no protocol for a woman
Okay,
attending
I
these
get
meetings.
that part, Paul. But within these walls, who makes the rules?
You, sir. You are the boss. You just have to act like one.
There are lots of great maths films. A Beautiful Mind, Good Will Hunting, The Man Who Knew Infinity, and this is another one, Hidden Figures. It's the true story of the brilliant Black American women mathematicians whose calculations helped launch the early space age, despite working in a segregated NASA. These women helped make possible everything from John Glenn's orbit of the Earth to the Apollo missions that eventually took Neil Armstrong to the moon. And that's just one recent chapter in the remarkable history of maths. The history of maths is crowded with giants. Around 3000 BC, the Babylonians developed base 60 arithmetic, the reason we still divide into 60 minutes and the circle is 360 degrees. Ancient Egyptians mastered fractions, areas, and volumes. In India, the 7th century mathematician Brahmagupta gave the first systematic rules for treating 0 as a number in its own right. In China, the 5th century mathematician Zhu Chongzi produced the best approximation of pi that the world would see for almost 1,000 years. The Greeks gave us Pythagoras, Euclid, and Archimedes. Contrary to popular myth, Christian scholars preserved, developed, and transmitted this classical tradition. We have the receipts in people like John Philoponus in 6th century Alexandria and Hunayn ibn Ishaq, the Syriac Christian scholar in 9th century Baghdad. Muslim scholars then took this combined classical and Christian inheritance and supercharged it in what can rightly be called the Islamic Golden Age. One of its greatest mathematicians was Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, whose work gave us algebra, and the word algorithm comes from his Arabic name. Then Europe produced thinkers like Nicole Oram, Isaac Newton, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, laying the foundations of modern science. But this brings us to the Enlightenment. And Satyan reckons, perhaps controversially, that something unhelpful happened at this point.
You've said that the Enlightenment wrongly divided the intellectual world between science, and they put maths there, and art and music, poetry.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
In one sense, it is incredibly important because it has given me a job. Right? Like, it has allowed me to live in my own corner. So the problem with, I think, if you pull back to a certain degree, I think that the problem with Enlightenment is not the division of these pieces, because as we get deeper and richer and stronger in understanding, nobody can be a full generalist, right? We're not there anymore. Everything is so deep that I'm not good at math. I'm not good at it. I'm just good at a speck of a problem about mathematics, right? So the Enlightenment kind of brought division here. The thing I disagree with the Enlightenment is the weighting of the system. To say that, okay, I get it, this is what a musician does, and this is what an artist does, and this is what a mathematician does, but the mathematician's better.
It's not exactly that the Enlightenment raised mathematics up. It divided it from other things like music, philosophy, poetry, and theology, and then demoted those other things as not really belonging to the realm of the truth. The earliest scientists, like Galileo, thought philosophically and theologically as they went about their maths. Nature is written in that great book which ever lives before our eyes. It is written in the language of mathematics, he wrote. Early scientists believed in the two books of truth, the Bible and nature. But after the Enlightenment, thinkers like Bertrand Russell and a host of newbies on the block talked like there was pretty much only maths. Ultimately, if you can describe the universe mathematically, you have explained it. And so you've explained away the need for a creator. So, did maths kill God? We'll be right back. Selah is a Hebrew word often associated with an intentional pause. And that's how Selah, the travel company, run their tours. They're for people who want to go deeper and learn about the incredible history of Christianity around the world. Walk in the footsteps of amazing medieval figures like the Venerable Bede across the landscapes of Scotland and Northern England. Man, I'd like to do that one. Or along the way with the Apostle Paul through Turkey, Greece, Malta, and Rome. I want to do that one as well. Or if you haven't had enough of me, I'll be taking a group of my besties around the Holy Land, the state of Israel and Palestine, later this year for 2 weeks, visiting the key sites of Jesus' life as we explore the origins of Christianity. But getting quick, these tours have limited numbers, so we can all get to know each other better. Hope to see you. Book your tour now at selah.au. That's SELAH.au. See you there.
Well, you're really not going to like it.
Tell us.
The answer to the great question
Yes.
of life, the universe, and everything
Yes.
is
Yes.
42. It was a tough assignment.
42?
Yep, that's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and author Douglas Adams' answer to life, the universe, and everything. It's a number. Incidentally, director Mark tells me that Adams chose the number 42 simply because he said it sounded funny. But it's a punchline with a serious implication because it suggests that mathematics is the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything. There are serious versions of the same funny idea.
Stephen Hawking, who was pretty good at maths, he sort of felt maths did away with God because we can explain all the things mathematically, and therefore in the beginning was maths, not God. Now, I happen to know you don't really buy that line of reasoning. Why not?
Well, I remember the last book that Hawking wrote, if I remember correctly, it opened with a preface. It simply said, "Philosophy is dead." And I found that absolutely hilarious because that's a philosophical statement, right? So he's claiming philosophy is dead by talking about a philosophical... So this is, again, this issue of the Enlightenment that I have a struggle with. True, Hawking was brilliant talking about black holes, cosmology, and the mathematics needed to understand those things. Stay in your lane. The moment you leave that lane and say, I can also play a role of a historian to understand how the world works. I could play the role of an anthropologist to talk about how humans are thinking about it. I could play the role of a linguistic scholar to see how the great texts in the world, whether it's the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the Christian letters of Paul to the brilliant Hebrew narratives that we find, like all of that can be explained in math, tells you that this person has no clue about this great spread, but the Enlightenment has shattered him into his own discipline, that he's just navel-gazing. To say that a cosmologist can understand these other disciplines is ridiculous. And so I would love to have Stephen Hawking say, actually, I have worked about 30 years of my life really focusing on history and the historicity of the resurrection, something that and here are some reasons, let me tell you why. But that's not what he did. You just wave your hand. Why should I trust Stephen Hawking as a cosmologist who studies black holes to tell me about literature? And so to me, that doesn't drive me at all. That's number one. Secondly, mathematics isn't interested in the world. It's just interested in creating our own structure and patterns of what truth is, right, within the rules that we come up with. For example, when I draw a curve and I say, how does the curve change over time? Well, that's a mathematical principle of the derivative, but that curve is an arbitrary, abstract concept. You could say, well, the hill can be approximated with a mathematical curve. So this notion of like pulling things from reality and bring it into the math world, that's what we do. And so all of a sudden, Stephen Hawking has the power, or someone has the power to talk about the notion of forgiveness, the notion of wonder, the notion of tears, the notion of fear, the notion of death, and these huge ideas that artists have struggled with, the poets cannot express except through small chips of many tweaks of poems and their words. If you look at the sonnets of Shakespeare, right, it's playing off of some of these incredibly complicated ideas, funny ideas, goofy ideas, gorgeous ideas. And so I find it very weird to be able to wash all that away because you are really good at understanding black holes.
let's press pause. I've got a 5-minute Jesus for you. I'll admit there's not much mathematics in the Bible, and a Galilean Jew like Jesus probably didn't even have maths lessons as a boy. Unlike Jews in other places at the same time, like Philo in Alexandria in Egypt, who lived pretty much exactly when Jesus lived, he certainly studied mathematics at school, because we have his writings where he does all sorts of mathematical fun stuff. But numbers were still important to ancient Jews and to some biblical authors. I may have mentioned before the amazing number symbolism in the opening chapter of the Bible. The all-important number 7 is everywhere. 7 was the number for perfection, for the divine. The opening sentence has 7 words in Hebrew. The crucial phrase, "and it was so," appears 7 times. The words, "and it was good," also appear 7 times, and the whole chapter is structured around 7 scenes or 7 days. And then there are multiples of 7 that keep coming. The word God appears 35 times. That's 5 times 7. The 2 halves of the created order, the earth and the sky or the heavens, appear 21 times each. That's 3 times 7, and so on and on. Then there's a whole class of number plays, as distinct from word plays, called gematria. This is the Aramaic form of the Greek word geometry. And the idea is very simple. In Hebrew and Aramaic, letters also function as numbers. The first 10 letters of the alphabet stand for the numbers 1 to 10. The next 9 stand for 20, 30, 40, and on it goes. That means that any number can be written with combinations of letters. And it also means every word ends up with a numerical value. And numbers can therefore stand for words. I know that sounds complicated, but actually here's a really cool example. In the book of Revelation, chapter 13, we get the most famous number in the Bible, 666.
He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Revelation chapter 13.
Many scholars have pointed out that 666 may be a gematria reference to Emperor Nero, the worst of the ancient persecutors. The great Revelation scholar David Owney writes these words: if the name Nero Caesar is transliterated into Hebrew from the Greek to form Neron Kaiser, the numerical value is 666. Neron equals 306 plus Kaiser equals 360, making 666. And, Owney says, most scholars agree that this is the most likely solution. My favourite example is in the opening of Matthew's Gospel. It probably seems pretty boring to us that Matthew begins with a long list of names, a genealogy, from Abraham to King David to Jesus. By the way, and I don't mean to pick on my American friends again, but the word is genealogy, not genealogy. It's an A, not an O. That's just for free. Anyway, Matthew divides his genealogy into 3 groups of 14 generations, all hinged around King David.
This is a record of the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah, a descendant of David and of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Aminadab. Aminadab was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother was Bathsheba, the widow of Uriah. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam. Rehoboam was the father of Abijah. Abijah was the father of Asa. Asa was the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was the father of Jehoram. Jehoram was the father of Uzziah. Uzziah was the father of Jotham. Jotham was the father of Ahaz. Ahaz was the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the father of Manasseh. Manasseh was the father of Ammon. Ammon was the father of Josiah. Josiah was the father of Jehoiachin and his brothers, born at the time of the exile to Babylon. After the Babylonian exile, Jehoiachin was the father of Shealtiel. Shealtiel was the father of Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was the father of Abiud. Abiud was the father of Eliakim. Eliakim was the father of Azor. Azor was the father of Zadok. Zadok was the father of Akim. Akim was the father of Eliud. Eliud was the father of Eleazar. Eleazar was the father of Mathan. Mathan was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. Mary gave birth to Jesus, who is called the Messiah.
And just in case we missed the pattern, Matthew concludes in verse 17 for the slow people in the audience.
All those listed above include 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the Babylonian exile, and 14 from the Babylonian exile to the Messiah.
Did you hear that? 14, 14, and for those in the back, 14. Why is this important? Especially since every reader of the Old Testament knew that Matthew had deliberately omitted several known generations to make the number 14 come out exactly right 3 times. The answer lies in one of Matthew's great themes. Jesus is the promised descendant of King David, who would, according to the Old Testament prophecies, rule the world forever. Here's the thing. The name David is spelled with 3 Hebrew letters, Dalet, Vav, Dalet. And those letters are also the numbers 4, 6, 4. Even my primary school mathematical brain can work out that 4 plus 6 plus 4 equals 14. Matthew's repeated emphasis on the number 14 is really an emphasis on David. Jesus is the fulfillment of all the hopes attached to David. I'm not making this up. The great Matthew scholars Davies and Allison write these words. In a genealogy of 3 times 14 generations, the one name with 3 consonants and a value of 14 is also placed in the 14th spot. When one adds that this name is mentioned immediately before the genealogy and twice at its conclusion, and that it is honoured by the title king, coincidence becomes effectively ruled out. The name David is the key to the pattern of Matthew's genealogy. Matthew takes the simple historical fact of Jesus' descent from King David and turns it into the anthem of his genealogy. You can press play now. I spoke to John Lennox just last week for an upcoming episode about his extraordinary life. Watch out for that. But given he also happens to be a professor of mathematics at the University of Oxford, I thought I'd throw in a kind of phone a friend for this episode. John, as usual, was a terrific sport.
Is mathematics discovered or invented? The answer to that is a resounding yes. I really think it's both. And both from a practical, experiential point of view and from a Christian perspective. God, the Creator, has done something rather remarkable. He has put together in one entity both intelligence and consciousness. And he has made us in his image, and part of that image is the capacity to create. In the world of ideas, in the world of machines, in the world of art and music, literature, everything else. So, on the one hand, I'm with the famous Pal Erdős, one of the most prolific mathematicians that ever existed, who'd turn up on every mathematician's doorstep, and he would knock the door, and he would smile and say, "My mind is opened," and he would immediately be invited in because everybody knew that before he left the house, he'd have written a joint paper with that person and therefore increased their academic output. So that we have this wonderful concept of an Erdős number. If I write a paper with you and you've written a paper directly with Erdős, my Erdős number is 2, which it is actually, but the paper wasn't written with you. So Erdős used to say of all mathematics, it's in the book, it's in the book. That is, we are discovering something that's actually there. And I think that was the impression of many of the brilliant pioneers of mathematics and physics, particularly Newton and Kepler and others. The phrase thinking God's thoughts after him, that actually the amazing thing about mathematics is it appears to work. It appears to be describing something out there that is independent of your brain or mind, so that the study of it becomes an internationally agreed phenomenon, in a sense. And it was so impressive to people like Einstein that he formulated it by saying the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it's comprehensible. I share that. I think the mathematical describability of the universe is one of the evidences that this is a word-based universe, as I would say is the genetic discovery of the information-carrying macromolecule DNA. This is a word-based universe. And that resonates with, in the beginning was the Word, or the simpler language of Genesis, and God said, a word-based universe.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. Gospel of John, chapter 1.
And we have the evidence of it out there. But in that, in our exploration, and after all, I think it's not just a straw in the wind, but the fact that God, who created the universe, started biology off, and indeed started science off, according to the Genesis record, by telling humans to name the animals. And that discipline of taxonomy is common to all intellectual activity, is a very good indicator, because strikingly, in the book of Genesis, God names several things: the heavens, the earth, the sea. And the fact that he doesn't name everything means this is a job for you humans to do. Be creative, get on with science and all the rest of it. So I do feel, not because I'm an Irishman, but because I perceive it that way, that it's both and rather than either or. And what human minds come up with has to be tested in some way against our perception of reality. And of course, that goes to the heart of science. If you do not believe that the universe is in some sense independently ordered, and not by you, you'll never do science, because science has that built-in assumption that the universe is going to be, at least in part, rationally intelligible. So that, for me, actually comes to form a solid base for theism.
Satyan took our conversation in a slightly different direction. He isn't convinced that maths points to God, not because maths is too powerful to leave room for the divine, but because maths is too weak to find God. Maths deals with simple things. Science deals with complex things. Philosophy and theology deal with the most significant things. It's things outside of maths that deal with our embodied life. Those are more likely to point the way.
When I was a kid, I was born and raised in India, and I came to the States when I was around 7 or 8 years old. And around 9 or 10, when we finally were able to afford a TV, I was watching it as a kid. We would watch maybe a half an hour of Sesame Street, where they would have these puppets talk about, the letter A and the letter B and the letter C and the numbers and all these different things, maybe talk about how the postal system worked and all these things. And then we would have Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And he would come in and he'd take off a sweater and sing a song as he took off his shoes. And for the whole half an hour, I learned nothing. Like, this guy wasn't talking about letters or numbers. He's talking.
Just for our non-American listeners, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is a children's show hosted by Fred Rogers that ran from 1968 to 2001, 912 episodes over 31 seasons. It was a gentle, thoughtful children's show that treated kids like intelligent people. Most kids wanted to be Mr. Rogers' neighbour. Sachin wasn't sure back then.
Numbers. He moves to a make-believe land of puppets, and oh my gosh, it just felt like a waste of time. Whereas at least for the first half an hour, I was getting something. And I say this because in my 40s, I finally realized what was going on. Sesame Street was giving me information, but Mr. Rogers was dealing with emotion. He's saying, I'm going to deal with loss. What if your parents are going through a hard time? You know what's going to happen? If you turn on the channel and listen to me, I will be faithful to you. I will always put on a sweater. I'll always take off those shoes. I'll be here over and over again. If the world is shaking, you could trust me to do the same actions. And I say that because the amount of measurable movement of knowledge was almost nothing for Mr. Rogers. But the depth of emotion and faithfulness he's able to convey is off the charts because he's dealing with something far more complicated. So as somebody, again, who yelled at Stephen Hawking a little bit and picked on this genius, I do want to say that I don't want to put myself in the shoes by saying I finally have some tools to defend God. Those aren't my tools. Those aren't my toolkits. But the reason notions of faith and notions of something bigger are exciting to me is because science doesn't deal with anything outside of this world. It is only designed to measure things in the world. Math makes its own world. So that's not it. But linguists, historians, artists, musicians, and my own life and my friendships, this embodied life that we live, those are other pointers to far more complicated and beautiful things.
It's a lovely thought, actually. He's saying embodied thought and experience over pure intellect are more likely to point to a creator God, to a God that purposed matter and our bodies themselves.
I guess I would say that the reason that I'm putting my chips in the theist bucket is not because of mathematics. But mathematics does have confirmation towards many of these things.
Okay, I'm really interested in that. Yeah.
So in some sense, when I see, going back to maybe the earlier conversation we were having about the fact that the scientists are worrying about questions of science and math makes its own world, and we're not interested in science at all. We might be motivated by it, but uninterested. And as both of these unrelated worlds pursue their own adventures, you would think that they would start in the same point, but move to very far off corners, right? Like I'm becoming more and more unrelated. In fact, the more maths you do, the more you cannot relate to the scientist. Because we both started by talking about the cube, but we're asking incredibly different questions about it. And the scientist is stuck in 3, maybe 4 dimensions of space and time, maybe 11 dimensions of string theory. But mathematicians are not interested in 11. We could talk about 800 dimensions without batting an eye, right? Dimensions are not related to the physical world. They're constructs we make. So naturally, my students and I always think about 800 dimensions and see what happens. That's not a weird thing for us. So you would think that the balls rolling down the hill would land at 2 very different spots, but the balls continue to be parallel. So it's interesting that even after 150 years, Einstein is asking some questions that mathematicians are going, oh, we've been thinking about that. So this connection between the real world and the mathematical world is fascinatingly close to one another. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's something really interesting that's something interesting that moves me, to say that something else is going on. Mm-hmm. Now, to say that, would I then say, well, clearly it has to be theism and there's a God, isn't enough. But there are these pointers, right? Mm. And also the pointers, I would say another pointer is it's this notion of kind of glory, that there's something bigger than us. I think a theist might say, maybe a Christian might say, like, you're called to worship something. We're just created beings. And when you are able to get glimpses of the beauty and the glory of mathematics, oh my gosh, you are close to seeing the face of God. It's the closest I can say. I could see this movement as being at a phenomenal football game with 100,000 people cheering on, or at a concert, and you're crying because this event that is happening, it's beyond you, right? You're involved in a bigger process of community. And I would say this notion of coming up with a new mathematics that's never existed before, this notion of a new creation. One could say co-creating, right? One could say, you're bringing with the part of the community of mathematics, you're creating something else. That's a different taste of glory. That's like listening to your favorite album and then crying in the car, right? Or holding a baby for the first time, or enjoying ice cream and a meal with friends and remembering that again, or any one of those glorious high points in life, or just a vacation that was phenomenal. I think that's the best of those is how I'd attribute to creating new mathematics. It is glorious. To me, it is a pointer to something bigger.
Albert Einstein knew a thing or two about maths. Like Satya, he didn't really think maths pointed directly to God, but he agreed it was a little spooky and points to bigger realities. I quoted Satya earlier. The full splendour of mathematics is so glorious, so majestic that we are all children when it comes to exploring it. Well, Einstein made exactly the same point in his 1929 interview with the great journalist and author George Sylvester Virek. It's a fun read, thoroughly recommended, because Virek talks about making his interview subjects squirm until they give up their fundamental philosophy. Einstein's reply is awkward, but beautiful, and it seems a fitting place to end an episode on beautiful mathematics.
Your question is the most difficult in the world. It is not a question I can answer simply with yes or no. I am not an atheist. I do not know if I can define myself as a pantheist. The problem involved is too vast for our limited minds. May I not reply with a parable? The human mind, no matter how highly trained, cannot grasp the universe. We are in the position of a little child entering a huge library, whose walls are covered to the ceiling with books in many different tongues. The child knows that someone must have written those books. It does not know who or how. It does not understand the languages in which they are written. The child notes a definite plan in the arrangement of the books, a mysterious order, which it does not comprehend but only dimly suspects. That, it seems to me, is the attitude of the human mind, even the greatest and most cultured, toward God. We see a universe marvelously arranged, obeying certain laws, but we understand the laws only dimly. Our limited minds cannot grasp the mysterious force that sways the constellations. Albert Einstein.
Undeceptions is hosted by me, John Dickson, produced by Kaley Payne, and directed and edited by Mark Hadley. Sophie Hawkshaw is on socials and membership. Alasdair Belling is writer and researcher. Siobhan McGuiness is our online librarian. Lyndie Leviston remains my wonderful assistant. Santino Dimarco is chief finance and operations consultant. Our voice actor today was Yannick Lawry. Undeceptions is the flagship podcast of Undeceptions.com, letting the truth out. Undeceptions podcast.